Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for making it to the event. I'm Neetu Agarwal, Chair of the Women in the Bank Enabling Pillar, part of the organizing team for this event. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Jillian Haslam, who is going to talk to us about whatever our title may be, how do we realize our full potential? How do we bring our best selves to work? Why do we need to set goals? Why do we need to work so hard? Why do we need to leave a legacy behind? And I think this topic somewhere deeply relates and interests all of us because work is a place where we really spend so much time in. And it's so important that this place enables us to utilize all the tools within us so that we are able to help the organization achieve the organization's goal, and the organization is able to help us. Talking about goals, I think we all are so immersed in delivering and attending to the daily demands that we tend to forget what we're actually trying to achieve. Suddenly you may realize that, oh my God, it's June already and half of the 2018 is already gone. And what am I doing? Hence the importance of goals. Our speaker, Jillian Haslam, is a philanthropist, an author, a trainer, a coach, and of course a speaker. Jillian previously spent many years working in the banking sector, both in UK and India, where she was president of Bank of America's charity network. She has spoken at some leading international organizations like McDonald's, Bank of America, Cambridge, King's College London, and many others. She has an extremely long list of awards. Just to name a few: Mother Teresa Memorial International Award, True Legend Award from the Telegraph, Role Model of the Year by the Advertiser London, Individual Achievements Awards from RBS and Bank of America. Today, Jillian is an extremely successful businesswoman, an extremely successful professional. However, her history, her background as a child, as a young adult, was far removed from that. Born with a British ancestry, she grew up in India where she lost 4 siblings in her family to malnutrition and poverty. And this event is her journey from poverty to plenty. So everyone, please join me in extending a very, very warm welcome to Jillian. We are really, really looking forward to hearing you, Jillian. And thank you so much for making time for us. The floor is all yours. Can I just mention something? Otherwise I'll be killed. This event is being live streamed and recorded. The presentation will be shared with Jillian, and the event might be on YouTube, but be rest assured the Q&A round will not be, so feel free. Thank you.
Good afternoon to each and every one of you. A short while ago, I was speaking at Cambridge, and then just a few weeks ago, I was speaking to the top sales achievers from 30 countries at Novo Nordics in Denmark. And if you had told me that I was born one day to be able to deliver such speeches, I would never have believed you. And my sisters would openly have laughed at you. But what I felt then is what I feel now. I feel truly humbled and very honored, and above all, very, very grateful for your time, for inviting me here today. I want to start with asking any of you if you have ever read the book, The Death of Ivan Illich. Has any one of you read it? All right. Ivan Illich is a Supreme Court judge who climbed the social ladder, who did extremely well, married a woman who was very pretty, and I don't mean that just physically, I mean that mentally too. But slowly over the course of time, she became very shrewd, she became very greedy, and he became very bitter. When they were moving home, he was trying to put up some curtains in his new home for his family, and he hurt his hip on a window knob, and that became cancerous. And very soon, he was bedridden, and when lying on his bed, He couldn't understand why he was put through so much pain, so much discomfort. And he thought to himself, I have lived a very normal life. I've been very successful. I've had a great job. I've been a good person. So why me? But the main question he asked himself was, why do I feel unhappy? Why do I feel that I've not achieved everything I wanted to achieve? Why do I feel this discontent? Why do I hate my wife and my family? Have I lived my life the wrong way round? And he couldn't come to terms with this, and it made him more and more angry every day. Now, why does this happen to us? Why are we born to do something? We are born to deliver something. We are born to leave a legacy behind. But yet, many of us go off the beaten track. And we get into different careers, and we do different things. And we lose sight of what we are born to do, our gift. We lose sight of that. Why does that happen? It happens for very many reasons, as I've put up on my slide. Family issues, a lack of skills, wrong school, wrong college, wrong job, sometimes even wrong husbands and wrong wives. Yeah. But all of that takes its course, and suddenly we find ourselves doing something that we don't want to do, or we are unhappy doing, or we are just not fulfilled. And very soon we get that calling. I had that calling when I was seated at RBS, and I loved my job. I loved the bank. I loved all the managers, and I could have stayed there till I was an old lady. And they all loved me across the 3 floors of transaction banking. But I myself sat there thinking, this is not where I am supposed to be. I've done 23 years in banking. I am capable of much more. I want to do more. Why am I here? I want to start with telling you all a little bit about where I came from, and why we should accept our start in life, but not our end. So the picture you see up on your screens of my parents, my little sister and myself, Vanessa, she is a teacher today in this country. I'm the chubby one with the puppy in my hands. And before I was born, my parents lost 2 kids, 2 girls, Carol and Minnie, before the ages of 6 months, to malnutrition and poverty. And then my sister and myself came along, and we stayed behind people's houses, in their verandas, under their stairs, and all of that. So that's the book I've written, which is Indian English. That's my mom. That's me on her shoulder, and that's my little sister Vanessa in her arms. But after we were born, we moved to a place called Dum Dum, and that's all written in my book. But my parents had twins, a girl and a boy, Kimberly and Alan. And they lost them too before the ages of 6 months to poverty and malnutrition. The reason I put up that tea case is because we were so poor that we couldn't even afford coffins. They were buried in tea cases. And up to the day my father's eyes closed, he would never tell my mother where he buried them, because he just went with some villagers and put them somewhere. So that was how poor we really and truly were. That's my father. But to give you an insight into where he came from, both my parents have British ancestry. My father served at the time of the British Raj in India and worked with the British Army. But after India got her independence, my father found it very, very hard to find work. And so one thing led to the other, and we were subjected to excruciating circumstances. This is the picture of our first home. which was really under a flight of stairs. Like I said, if you go on to indianenglishthebook.com, you can look at documentaries and pictures and see that the place still stands to this day, and that's where we spent much of our childhood. Well, my father was recovering after one cardiac arrest after the other because of just so much that he had been through at the time when he was in the army, losing so many children, abject poverty, struggling to keep us alive, and all the problems that come with living in such poverty. When he got better, we moved to our second home, which was in a proper slum. And to give you an idea of our second home, which was our real home, it was a little room 8 by 10 feet. There were no sanitary conditions. We filled water from a tube well. There was hardly any electricity. And to give you just a general idea, about 3,000 people shared 3 toilets. So that's where we grew up, and most of us were girl children. But my father never ever lost hope, and neither did my mother. They always told us that that is your start. It does not have to be your end. I want to tell you a little story about my sister Susan. Susan was a little baby, 3 days old, when my mother brought her home from the hospital, placed her on a bed in this little room, and said, "There's nothing we can do. The doctors have given up on her as well." And I was just 8 years old at the time. When I looked at her and I loved her little fingers and toes, that was the very first time I could really come to terms with what a baby truly was. I was too little the other times. But when I looked at her, I loved her, and I thought, what's my mom saying? But my mom was so weak and so sick, and she had virtually sacrificed everything for us. She used to bring home one little carrier of food with 2 pieces of meat and one little, what we call rotis in India, but it's like a naan bread, and she would say, "Eat it up," and we would eat it, and we would never think, "Mom, have you eaten?" Because she would say, "My friends have given me so much that my stomach is full. Just have it." And we were like piranha fish. We would just swipe it because we were so hungry. But when my little sister was brought home, my mother said to my father, "It doesn't matter if she's going to go because the doctors have given up on her." And the doctors gave my mother a little envelope with some white homeopathic powder in it and said, "You give it to her every hour because that's all you can afford in government hospitals there." But my father said, "Oh, don't worry, we'll try to do our best for her." I thought, what do babies need? Milk. But we were not living on a farm. So I thought, where have I seen milk? So I went running to the tea shop, the local tea shop, which is the picture that you see on your screen of the man. He's still alive, and the shop still stands to this day. I ran to him with a little steel bowl in my hands like Oliver Twist. He said, "Please, sir, can you please give me just a little milk for my sister?" And he was like, "Milk doesn't come free, you know. It costs money. You better go. I can't just give you milk." But I used to stand there with my bowl in hand and say, "You can save my sister's life. You can give me that milk." So, of course, every day they would put a bucket of water in the milk because they had to dilute it so it would, go further. But I didn't mind. Every day he used to give me that milk. And every day I would run home, mix the homeopathic powder in it, press her cheeks together, feed it to her spoon by spoon. And she lived past 3 days, and she lived past 3 months and 3 years, and she graduated in this country. Her picture was on many of the tubes and buses. She topped her university, and today she's married to a lovely, lovely boy in Australia, and she's given birth to 2 beautiful children, Samantha and Oliver. At that time, we felt that the country had given up on us. The community had given up on us, and the doctor too had given up on us. But I, for some reason, I cannot explain why, but I accepted that as a start, but I couldn't accept it as it was going to be our end. So I tried my best to do whatever I could for her in order to save her life. There is a lot that we can learn just from children. Children in war zones, poverty-stricken zones, anywhere in the world, you give children any kind of hardship, And they'll cry, they'll be hungry, they'll play around just like my sister and myself ran around in the lanes in India, asking for food, asking for sweets, asking people for vegetables and meat and whatever we could get our hands on. We just played locally with the children, we just survived. But children tend to move on. They just go with the flow. But there's something that children can't do. They don't have the wisdom and they don't have the experience to change the end result. But we do. We do because we have age, we have experience, we have that wisdom to change that end result. My father always used to say, and quote Darwin, so he used to say, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the ones most resilient and responsive to change. So no matter what happens, however many times you get put down, however small the episode, however big the episode, you have to learn to get up again, and we have to learn to fight. Why? Because we all are here with a purpose. We are all here to fulfill some need. And my parents wanted us to fulfill that need. I asked you the question before, why do we settle? Why do we settle for mediocre lives? Why does this happen? This happens because life gets in the way and we forget our own dreams, we forget our own strengths, we put everything on a back burner and we just think, next year, after 5 years, maybe after 2 years, because there is this unconscious side of us that actually believes that we might live forever. We might, who knows? But nothing is going to happen to us. And that's what happens unconsciously. So we keep putting our dreams, our hopes, our desires, our needs on hold. And that happens because for some reason we lose sight of our strengths, our own strengths that actually lead to us discovering ourselves, finding our purpose, and achieving our dreams. But we have to start with our strengths. Sometimes we don't even think about that. We think we are very good at a job. Let's just carry on with that job. And that's what we are good at. But trust me, I'm going to give you evidence of how I was brought to life. I'm going to show you that what I thought was my strength was actually my weakness. Whitney Houston herself has admitted that she herself didn't know her strengths. She had no idea of what she was capable of, the greatness that she could achieve, and the messages that she could impart to this world. She had no clue that she was capable of this. Like her, like you, I had a dream too. I wanted to be able to leave a legacy behind, to achieve something, to reach out to thousands and thousands of people. My dream from a little girl, maybe because of all the poverty I saw, maybe because of where I grew up, or maybe because my mother was just a highly charitable person, I wanted nothing more than to help people. I wanted to help the sick and the blind and the disabled and the poor and the destitute and the aged. I wanted to just help hundreds and hundreds of people. That was my dream. When I was a little girl in school with my sister Vanessa, and we used to get 1 rupee pocket money, we used to run to the store opposite the school, buy little bread. In India you get these little loaves of bread, and they cut the butter in 4 so you can buy it in part. So we used to buy that little butter and a little bread and little jam, and we used to run to the aged home, put 1 slice on each of their laps with a little butter and a little jam, and we used to get so excited when they used to eat it because they never ever even got bread and jam. So that desire, that passion came from back then when I was in school. But how would I achieve that? When I got into banking and when I was interviewed, and of course I was interviewed out of 250 girls at Bank of America over 6 months of rigorous testing. We came down to 150, 100, 75, 53, and I was selected for the role. But that in itself is like, I could write a book on it. But anyway, it's there that something happened to me. It's there that I discovered that I needed to ask for help. And I got a very, very good mentor who actually didn't talk to me about time management and persuasion skills and, leadership and all of that. He actually brought out the best in me. And that is exactly what I'm trying to impart to you today. He said to me, just take a piece of paper and write down what decisions you're making and what you think the outcome may be. Just think about it. And I just wrote 3 of them only. And I thought, I want this to happen. I've taken this decision, and this is what I expect to happen. And we did it first only for 10 days, and then we moved on to larger periods of time. But that was amazing because it brought out the answers of where my strengths lie. Was I thinking with my heart or with my head? Was I making the right decisions, positive or negative? Were those decisions serving me or harming me? Was I constantly thinking with my emotional hat on? Was I? This exercise really and truly helped me tremendously. After we got the answers, he then asked me, how are you going to bridge the gaps with the negatives that you found? Or, better still, if these are your strengths and you've discovered that 3 or 4 consecutive times you have made great decisions and those decisions have served you, how are you going to then get better and how are you going to improve on those? Aristotle said one very great line: we are what we repeatedly do. That's all. So he asked me, what is it you repeatedly do, Jillian? From a strength perspective, what is it that you are planning to do by the end of your life? Now I want to tell you, when we were living under the stairs, my mother put us with one of her best friends, Mrs. Cleophas. Mrs. Cleophas offered my mom to keep us because while living under the stairs, we got very ill. We were only little girls. And so every day she used to put us on the floor with our books and pencils and say, write your ABC, your 1, 2, 3. And we had to live with her for a while. She loved my sister Vanessa, but she didn't like me very much, and that's putting it mildly. But anyway, my sister Vanessa, even to this day, being a teacher, is very naughty and very funny. She still is. And so she used to throw water on my book and put a pencil through and all those kind of things. And when Mrs. Cleophas used to walk in the room, she would ask me, who did that? And I would say, I did, because I never ever wanted to get my sister into trouble. But her way of punishing a child was very different from anything that you know. She used to take me by my ear downstairs to a toilet that was about 2 feet in width and about 6 feet in height. And she used to put me in there, and in that toilet were thousands of giant cockroaches. Thousands of them. And she would put me in there, close the door, and put off the light. Every day. So when it was about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was a dark day when it was going to be raining, I used to wet myself because I used to think night is coming and she's going to put me into that horror cell. I was so scared. But whenever my mother visited, being my mom, she used to say, are you saying your pleases, your thank yous? Are you being obedient? Are you listening? Are you being grateful? Blah, blah, blah. So we never got a word in. Till one fine day on a visit when my mom came, I just wet myself standing there, and my mom thought, there is something wrong. And my mom took us from there. But the reason I tell you that story is because I grew up with a nervous disposition. I grew up frightened of my own shadow. I grew up falling in front of my own boyfriends every day. I grew up not even being able to ask a question. I grew up sitting in the last row every time I had to attend anything. But this mentor actually turned me and made me realize that, Jillian, you have a gift, but you haven't realized it yet. I had already been 10 years in banking, and I hadn't realized it. I didn't know that I had the ability to speak. I didn't know that I could drop that fear that was actually unconsciously holding me back. I didn't know these things. He asked me, why are you here? Why are you on this planet? You're here to fulfill your purpose. He brought out the best in me. Most schools and most people actually help children and help any one of us to go from a place of incompetence to mediocrity. But actually, it is far better and we use far less energy if we were to first identify our strengths and then use that to take us to excellence. Harvard and very many other organizations talk about this. So we need to understand whether we are readers, whether we are listeners, whether we are talkers, whether we are writers. Eisenhower, for example, was a reader. Every time he delivered a speech, the journalist asked him so many questions and he didn't listen. He just kept rambling on with all his answers. And finally he was put down that he didn't listen to people. Lyndon, on the other hand, was a listener. He had teams of people writing brilliant work and sending it to him. He hardly read anything because he was a listener. He wanted people to talk to him. And his team were a team of brilliant writers. Churchill himself was a writer. He said he hated school. It was torture because he wanted to write. Very many leaders in the banking industry, in the corporate world, are actually talkers. I know people who put their teams in a room and they ask them not to speak. Just write your notes. And they talk about their ideas. They talk about the future. And that's how they get their inspiration and their ideas going. After the meetings, they get all their feedback, etc. But they are talkers. That's the way we learn. That is how we should learn. Another few things I wanted to share with you is that, again, we talk so much about leadership and who are leaders, who can run an organization, etc. But sometimes we are very, very good in second position. We are very good as advisors. Again, questions to ask, are you good with working under stress? Or do you like a peaceful, quiet, structured existence? I can tell you for me, I enjoy working under stress. Obviously, I've worked in a bank. Yeah. So, 23 years and I can't function peacefully and with a proper structure. I need to have that stress going. Am I insane? Probably yes. But that's who I have become. Again, are you a loner or do you like to work in teams of people? There are very many high-profile people who like to work alone. There are little things like manners. So for example, if you had a proposal or you had an idea that every time you shared with a group of people and you got a no, or not really, you should ask yourself these questions. Am I really not being polite to some people? Is my mobile phone ringing and am I taking calls every time I talk to them? Am I not saying please, thank you? You know, as speakers we are taught that when you take the stage, half your battle is won if you're a warm, kind person. It takes much longer to warm to an audience or to people. So these are some of the things that can help us to find our strengths. Many of us face this time which we call a midlife crisis, when we get almost to the second half of our lives. These are some of the things that we choose to do when we get there. I got there too. But what are we doing to make sure that when we get to the end stages of our life, have we fulfilled the reason why we are here? Have we used our current jobs, our careers, and everything that we are doing now? Can we use that to build our own purpose, to make sure that we ourselves are happy? and that we don't turn up like another Ivan Illich, lying at the end of our lives, thinking, have I really and truly lived my life the wrong way round? Now, the reason I say why we shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket is only because I felt that I was in a great job. I was in a bank. I could have stayed there, like I said, till I was an old lady. But there is no escaping setbacks in life. There's no getting away from it. There's no getting away from some of the serious things that all of us will face. All of us will face these things. But what happens when we get there and when we find ourselves probably without a job, probably sick, probably in an accident, probably a family member ailing? That is the time we need to ask ourselves, why are we here? And what are we born to do? I had actually a managing director tell me the other day that, Jillian, I was made redundant in the bank. And there was a time when hundreds of people were writing to me when I was getting a new job in a new bank and a new role, and I couldn't deal with the hundreds of emails that were coming in. But the minute I lost my job and I was sitting home, people avoided my calls. They didn't reply to me. They said they were busy. They said they were traveling. I can count my friends on my fingers. So what happens when you get to that point in time? What happens? I tell you, I have a man who is suffering with Alzheimer's, and he writes the examination papers for about 13 underprivileged schools from his bed. And that actually gives him the power to feel wanted. It gives him his self-worth back. When someone sends you a card and says, thank you for paying my school fees, I'm a big girl now, can I come and see you? You think, it's great. It's a job well done. I've done something in my life. There's a lot that can happen with our own mental state of mind when we get to that stage. But we need to plan and prepare for it now. It may be just simple things like being part of your church community, a ladies' club, helping to teach underprivileged children, visiting an aged home. Whatever it is you choose to do, link that to what you do now. You know, we are so privileged. You can just go out there and say, I work for the Bank of England, and the doors will be open to you. Just by the name. You can lend your voice, you can lend your skill, you can lend all of your experience to hundreds and thousands and millions of people. Trust me, I've done it. And I'm here to just show you that that will come in handy. So very quickly, I want to just rush through some slides to show you what I did. So I have 6 teams in India, and we look after the youth, women in need, young girls, the aged, the children, the disabled. Those are some pictures of our 5 study centers of street kids that we take in and we educate and we feed and we just look after them. And these teams of people work 24/7 round the clock with all these different kinds of people who are in desperate need. My own sister works with the disabled and she works with autistic children. We have training programs and mentoring programs for the young, and we train them and then we place them into 5-star hotels in reception or, back-end office work and things, kitchen areas, that kind of thing. We also look after the aged, and we have 3 huge food banks that we maintain for them, and some of them are bent in 2, they can't even stand. We also have a team for, as I said, for the disabled, which my sister helps with, and many of these people, as you can see, some of them come to the food banks and they sign their ration cards even with their feet. They're so severely disabled. We also have a team for young girls, and we have tailoring centers, and we have English language centers, and we have computer centers. It's all to enable them to get a skill and to work. Because just like me, I was a family of 12. I didn't know what to do. I was born in the middle and lost somewhere in between. But I had a family, and I wanted to help. My school took us in. St. Thomas's Girls' School is a school set up by the British. And my mother went from school to school asking, will you take these girls in? But of course, because we had no money to pay, nobody took us in. Eventually, one gentleman, Mr. Cameron, took us in, free of cost. And he actually gave us the gift of education that we could never have got, and I wouldn't have been in front of you today if it wasn't for that great soul. But because I'm a speaker, I've now set up the National Speaking Academy in England, and we're actually holding a UK-wide competition for children. We've just held it in India. I want to give people, and mainly children, the power to speak and to tell their stories. I want to give them a voice. And of course, being a speaker, that's the best I can do. What is the meaning of life, as I was taught? That I should remember why I'm here and what I'm born to do. I didn't know I had a voice. I didn't know I could speak. I didn't know I could leave my fears behind. And I didn't know I was capable of doing such kind of charity work and reaching out to thousands and thousands of people. But last year I was invited to receive the Mother Teresa International Memorial Award. And I've now come to the conclusion that that is what I was born to do. I was head of charity in Bank of America for the 4 metropolitan cities, and I lost sight of that. And I carried on with my day job. When I came to RBS, I rushed again to the MD and I said, can you help me? The CEO in Bank of America has helped me. Can you help me too? He said, Jillian, what help do you need? I said, I need you to mentor me. You know, I walked into a bank where people had rock star resumes. They came from Princeton and Harvard and Cambridge and Oxford. I didn't. But I needed to know what they knew. I needed to learn. I wanted to be able to fulfill my own dreams. And so I asked for their help. And they helped me. They coached me. They mentored me. They've even endorsed my book. And I can pretty much ask them for anything today, and they'll do it. That has really got me quite far. I have managed just not to only reach people, but I've also managed not to go around asking people for help and for money in order to achieve my own dreams. I've done it on my own. And the book that you see over here, this is currently being turned into a Hollywood production, and the movie is out in 2020. If you go onto Indian English, themovie.com, you can even watch the first trailer that's there. But it's true when Tolstoy said that everyone thinks of changing the world, but no one thinks of changing himself or herself. We need to start with asking ourselves, what are our strengths and how we can put those strengths to use, not just for ourselves, but also so that we have something to hang on to, so that we don't die with our music still within us, and we don't, I spoke to a lady at a hospice the other day because one of my friend's husbands were there, and she was a nurse, and I said to her, how do you do this job? How do you work here? She said, I love it. And I said to her, what are the questions that you normally get asked? What are the conversations you have? And she said, Jillian, don't even ask. Most of the time I get told, I wish I had done that. If I could get better, I could do that. I wish I could get one more chance to do that. I wish my daughter can do that because I didn't get an opportunity to do that. I think my son is walking in my footsteps. He'll do what I couldn't do. So that is what comes out from the horse's mouth. And that is what we need to take away from this. We shouldn't allow our music to die within us. We have an opportunity. And we have to take care of our mental state of mind when lightning strikes, when disaster does strike. And we have to, and we can, leave a legacy behind. You know, we've had great leaders like Mandela, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Princess Diana, and all of these people who we keep on talking about. But they're all dead and gone. And the world is in need of great leaders, genuine leaders. So we need to ask ourselves, could one of them be you? Could one of them be you? And with that, I'd like to say a huge thank you for having me here today. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them.